The rain cascaded from the sky as Alex Carter found himself marooned, anticipating the arrival of his driver. Exasperated, he was on the verge of bolting when a tiny hand grasped his sleeve. "Excuse me, sir," a little girl said, extending a vibrant pink umbrella towards him. He accepted it, his attention drawn to her captivating blue eyes, mirroring his own blue eyes. Amidst the downpour, he caught sight of her. The woman he believed was lost to him forever. In that instant, the world transformed completely. Heavy sheets of rain poured down, soaking the city streets in an instant. Alexander Carter had dedicated the whole day to a relentless series of meetings, transitioning from one business deal to another without a single moment of respite. He hardly glanced away from his phone as he exited the imposing headquarters of Carter Enterprises, anticipating his driver would be there as always. Yet, the moment the frigid rain penetrated his finely crafted suit, he understood that something was amiss. The driver arrived later than expected. Grumbling quietly to himself, Alex surveyed his surroundings for any refuge, yet the tempest had already inundated the walkways. Individuals rushed by, their umbrellas struggling to withstand the fierce gusts of wind. His office building loomed behind him, yet stepping back inside would subject him to the scrutinizing gazes of his employees, the CEO, drenched in the rain like any other person. He was averse to showing any signs of vulnerability, even in situations as seemingly insignificant as inclement weather. Just as he was on the verge of making a dash, a tiny silhouette drew his gaze. A young girl lingered at the threshold of a quaint convenience store, seeking shelter beneath the awning. She appeared no older than 6, her long, dark brown hair curling gently at the tips. Her blue eyes, vivid and luminous, pierced through the darkness of the tempest. She held a small pink umbrella tightly in her hands, clearly designed for a child rather than an adult. Alex would have continued on his path if she hadn't approached him. "Here, mister," she said gently, extending the umbrella in his direction. "You will become completely soaked." Alex blinked, briefly caught off guard by the surprising gesture. He was unaccustomed to receiving assistance from others, particularly not from unfamiliar faces, and certainly not from a young one. He cast a fleeting look at the small umbrella, then turned his gaze to the girl, who regarded him with a gentle, unspoken warmth. "You'll get wet," he remarked, bending down a bit to lock eyes with her. She shrugged, conveying an air of indifference. "I can patiently wait for my mother beneath the awning." The way she expressed it caused a tightness in his chest. Her voice carried a subtle assurance, reminiscent of a child who had navigated the complexities of self-reliance in ways that were perhaps unorthodox. He paused briefly before grasping the umbrella, positioning it delicately over his head. "What's your name?" he inquired. "Lily." He gave a slight nod, his gaze drifting toward the store. "So, where is your mother?" Lily replied, gesturing towards the convenience store situated behind her. "She works here. She's currently indoors, but she'll be stepping out shortly." Alex gazed out at the world beyond the rain-smeared window. The shop was modest, hardly larger than a corner establishment, and it seemed that just one individual was tending to it. Though her features were shrouded in ambiguity, an unsettling feeling crept into his mind regarding the circumstances at hand. He had never given much thought to those who toiled in establishments like this, individuals who dedicated countless hours behind counters while the bustling city flowed by, oblivious to their presence. He let out a breath, tightening his hold on the delicate umbrella. "Your mother stays late at work." Lily gave a slight nod. "At times. I patiently await her arrival here, and that's perfectly fine. I have no objections." Alex experienced an unusual weight pressing down on his chest. He couldn't quite grasp why it unsettled him so deeply, why he found himself engaged in a conversation with a child amidst the chaos of the storm. Yet there was something in her demeanor, in the straightforwardness of her words, in the simple act of offering him an umbrella without any anticipation of reward, that rendered it unthinkable for him to turn his back and leave. For a man who had dedicated years to constructing barriers around his heart, it was a sensation he had never encountered before. Just as he was about to speak, the door to the store burst open. As soon as he laid eyes on the woman who emerged, a stillness enveloped him, halting every thought and feeling within. His breath hitched in his throat, fingers instinctively tightening around the umbrella. There she was, standing in place, her expression mirroring the shock he felt inside, Hannah White. A woman he had not laid eyes on for 6 long years. A woman vanished, leaving no clues behind. And in that moment, as his eyes darted from her to Lily, understanding crashed over him with the force of a tidal wave. This was no ordinary little girl. This was his child. Hannah halted, her gaze locking onto Alex's. For a moment, she seemed on the verge of fleeing, but then her eyes darted to Lily, who stood next to him, gripping the small pink umbrella tightly in her hands. Her complexion faded, and she inhaled shakily as she moved ahead, her arms naturally extending toward her daughter. "Lily, darling, what brings you out here?" Her voice carried a gentle quality, yet it was laced with tension, as if she were fighting to maintain her poise. Lily beamed up at her. "Mom, I handed him my umbrella. He was becoming completely soaked." Hannah's jaw clenched as she redirected her focus to Alex. "I understand that." Alex hardly caught her words. His thoughts were still swirling from the surprise of encountering her once more, from the tumult of feelings surging within him. His heartbeat thudded in his ears as his gaze darted between Hannah and Lily. The similarity was unmistakable. The familiar gentle brown waves, the same intricate details of the face. Yet it was the gaze that confirmed it. Vivid, captivating azure. "It's blue." His whole being stiffened as the truth dawned on him. Lily was no ordinary little girl. She belonged to him. An intense fury welled up within him, clashing with the disbelief that had rendered him immobile. He clutched the umbrella firmly, compelling himself to inhale deeply, to concentrate. He was filled with a myriad of questions, yet none could escape the tightness in his throat. Hannah squirmed beneath his gaze. "Alex," she murmured, her voice scarcely rising above a whisper. 6 years had passed. 6 years of quietude. 6 years of uncertainty. For 6 long years, the truth remained unspoken between them. "Does she belong to me?" His voice came out deeper than he meant, unwavering yet brimming with an intense, unrefined emotion. Hannah's breath caught in her throat. Lily glanced back and forth, a look of bewilderment crossing her features. "Mother?" Hannah knelt beside her daughter, gently tucking a damp strand of hair behind her ear. "Why don't you step inside, dear? I'll arrive shortly." Lily paused, casting a final glance at Alex before giving a small nod. With a radiant smile, she passed him the umbrella. "This can be yours, sir." The manner in which she expressed it stirred a deep ache within his chest. He managed a smile, his tone softer as he addressed her. "Thanks, Lily." With a gentle wave, she stepped into the store. As the door clicked closed behind her, a palpable tension filled the space between him and Hannah. The tempest raging outside paled in comparison to the turmoil brewing within him. "Answer me," he demanded, his tone now more cutting. "Does she belong to me?" Hannah exhaled slowly, her breath trembling slightly. "Indeed." The word struck him with the force of a tangible impact. He stepped back, raking a hand through his drenched hair. A myriad of emotions clashed within, each vying for control, anger, shock, disbelief, and a profound grief for the years that had slipped away. "You never shared that with me." His voice was subdued, yet it carried a certain strength. Hannah's fingers clenched tightly into fists. "I had the desire to." He released a sardonic chuckle. However, that was not the case. She recoiled. "Are you aware of what you have taken from me?" His voice was escalating, his calm demeanor unraveling. "It has been 6 years, Hannah. 6 years of her life that are lost to me forever. Her eyes shimmered, yet she blinked rapidly, compelling herself to remain resilient. I believed I was making the correct choice. Alex's jaw tightened. The appropriate course of action. Preventing my access to my daughter. Tears hovered at the brink of release, yet she resolutely shook her head. You simply don't get it, Alex. You weren't, she said, her breath coming out in a sharp rush as she clutched the sleeves of her coat tightly. You were never the type of man who sought a family. In those days, it was all centered around your profession, your organization, your upcoming agreement. I feared that sharing this with you would lead to feelings of resentment. He gazed at her, his expression one of utter astonishment. So instead, you simply vanished. I found myself at a loss for what to do next. Alex exhaled slowly, attempting to regain his composure, yet the anger lingered, bubbling just below the surface. For years, he had been under the impression that Hannah had just left him behind, completely unaware that she was nurturing their child all along. His offspring. A faint voice within him suggested that perhaps she had been correct, perhaps the man he once was wouldn't have been prepared. Yet, none of that held significance at this moment. He was prepared at this moment. He stood tall, his voice subdued yet resolute. I desire to understand her better. Hannah paused, uncertainty flickering in her mind. Alex. I'm not making a request, Hannah. His voice held a steady resolve, his choice firmly established. She is my daughter, and I will not turn my back on this situation. Hannah's lips parted slightly, hinting at an anticipation of an unexpected response. For a moment, she simply gazed at him, examining his features, attempting to decipher the emotions hidden beneath his fury. She swallowed, nodding with deliberation. Understood. It was rather minimal. It fell short. Yet, it marked the beginning. Alex had devoted his whole existence to making thoughtful choices. With each business decision, every alliance forged, and every investment made, he meticulously crafted his empire by maintaining a firm grip on the reins. Yet, at this moment, he found himself stepping into an entirely unfamiliar realm. He was blessed with a daughter. A 6-year-old girl with blue eyes that reflected his own. A child who had been navigating her existence without him, entirely oblivious to the fact that, somewhere in the vastness of the world, she had a father. He could hardly recall the journey that led him home that night. His mind raced, thoughts clashing as he struggled to make sense of it all. He had immersed himself in his endeavors, dedicated to growing his enterprise, and crafting a future he believed was significant. All this time, this had been the future he was completely unaware of. As Hannah consented to allow him into Lily's world, he noticed the uncertainty flickering in her gaze. She remained cautious around him, and he understood her hesitation. Despite his bitterness over her decision to keep Lily hidden from him, he recognized that Hannah had been correct about one aspect. At that time, he likely wouldn't have been prepared. But at this moment? At that moment, nothing held greater significance than reclaiming the time that had slipped away. The following morning, he stood outside the quaint coffee shop where he and Hannah had planned to rendezvous. It was a serene spot, nestled among a line of neighborhood shops, nothing akin to the fancy dining establishments he was accustomed to. Uncertainty loomed as he crossed the threshold, yet the moment his gaze fell upon them by the window, an undeniable change stirred within him. Lily was immersed in her art, using a red crayon to bring a napkin to life with her imaginative strokes. Hannah perched next to her, cradling a coffee cup, her gaze sweeping across the room until it finally settled on him. For a fleeting moment, she appeared hesitant, as if she doubted whether he would truly arrive. He moved ahead, pausing briefly before drawing out the chair opposite them. Lily gazed upward, her blue eyes brimming with curiosity yet devoid of hesitation. She remained unaware of his identity, oblivious to the fact that the man seated opposite her was destined to play a significant role in her life. Hannah took a moment to clear her throat. Lily, do you recall the gentleman from last night? The individual who assisted you with your umbrella? Lily gave a slight nod. The individual who became completely soaked. Alex wore a sly grin. Indeed, that was I. Lily inclined her head. Your appearance seems a bit parched today. He let out a soft laugh. That tends to be the objective. Hannah exhaled softly before facing her daughter. Darling, there's something truly significant I must share with you. Lily set her crayon aside, feeling the change in her mother's voice. She gazed upward, anticipation in her eyes. Hannah paused briefly before finding her words. Alex, he is your father. The words lingered in the atmosphere, their weight almost overwhelming to comprehend. Alex paused, his gaze fixed on Lily, keenly observing for any hint of comprehension. For a brief moment, she simply gazed at him, her delicate brows knitted in contemplation. Then she inquired, truly? Alex nodded, his voice gentler than he anticipated. Indeed. Truly. Lily blinked, then redirected her gaze to Hannah. Just like a genuine father. Hannah took a deep breath. Absolutely, darling. Just like a genuine father. Lily's delicate fingers wrapped around the napkin she had been bringing to life with color. She gazed at Alex once more, examining him with the same intensity she had applied to her drawing just moments before. Where have you been hiding? The inquiry struck him with more force than he had anticipated. He stole a look at Hannah, who averted her gaze to her coffee, as though the words were trapped inside her, unable to escape. Alex took a deep breath. I was unaware of your existence, Lily. Had I been able, I would have arrived earlier. Lily remained silent for a moment. She gazed at him with those wide, understanding eyes, and for a brief moment, he questioned whether she might ask him to leave. Then, just as swiftly as her silence had enveloped the room, she grasped her crayon once more and deftly pushed the napkin across the table in his direction. If you'd like, you can join me in coloring. The breath he hadn't known he was holding finally slipped away. He grasped the crayon, rolling it thoughtfully between his fingers as he cast a sidelong glance at Hannah. She observed them intently, her face betraying nothing. Lily gently tapped the napkin. Just make sure to get it right. A gradual smile unfolded on Alex's face. I will give it my all. As he leaned in and began to fill the page with hues, a revelation dawned upon him. This was not going to be a simple task. He couldn't possibly compensate for 6 years in just one conversation. Yet Lily wasn't rejecting him. And that exceeded all his expectations. Alex was uncertain about what would unfold following that initial encounter with Lily. He entered the cafe, a sense of unfamiliarity washing over him, unsure if she would even acknowledge his presence. Yet, when she passed him that crayon and playfully warned him not to ruin her drawing, everything changed. She had allowed him entry, even if only slightly. That fleeting instant had been sufficient to affirm one truth for him: he was here to stay. The following day, he found himself positioned outside the modest apartment building that housed Hannah and Lily. It bore no resemblance to the opulent high-rises he was accustomed to, yet it was meticulously maintained, adorned with flower pots on the modest balconies, and the soft murmur of a television floated from an open window. He hadn't received a formal invitation, not really, but after their encounter at the cafe the previous day, Hannah had, with some hesitation, consented to allow him to share more moments with Lily. As he lifted his hand to knock, uncertainty washed over him. This was not a formal setting, and there was no agreement to discuss. Here stood his daughter, a little girl he had yet to meet, and now he found himself at her doorstep, yearning to carve out a space in her world. He inhaled deeply and rapped his knuckles twice. The door swung open moments later, revealing Hannah, her expression a mix of surprise and caution. She cast a fleeting look at the time on her phone before redirecting her gaze to him. You've arrived ahead of schedule. Alex wore a subtle smirk. I thought that was preferable to arriving late. With a resigned breath, she moved aside, granting him entry. The apartment, though petite, exuded a warm and inviting charm. The walls were adorned with vibrant drawings, some elegantly framed while others were affixed with a casual touch. Several plush toys lay haphazardly across the couch, and a delicate aroma of something sugary lingered in the air, perhaps cookies. "Lily's in her room," Hannah remarked, folding her arms across her chest. "She remains unaware of your presence at this moment." Alex nodded, his fingers brushing through his hair thoughtfully. "How is she doing?" Hannah paused, uncertainty flickering in her mind. "Serene. She's lost in contemplation. She inquires frequently, but that's simply part of her nature." He sensed the underlying protectiveness in her tone. She was determined to protect their daughter from any form of harm, whether emotional or otherwise. Despite his lingering anger over her decision to keep Lily away from him for such an extended period, he held a certain admiration for that aspect of her character. She had nurtured their child on her own, and that must have been quite a challenge. "I simply seek an opportunity, Hannah," he murmured, his tone calm yet firm. "That's all I seek." She observed him intently for a prolonged moment before ultimately giving a nod. "Very well. Feel free to enter." He trailed behind her through the narrow corridor until they arrived at a cozy bedroom. The door stood slightly open, revealing Lily on the floor, meticulously aligning a row of dolls in perfect order. She remained oblivious to their presence, her mind consumed by the vivid tapestry of her own imagination. Hannah softly cleared her throat. "Lily, my dear, there's someone here to see you." Lily glanced upward, her blue eyes growing a touch wider as she noticed Alex framed in the doorway. She gazed at him for a moment before tilting her head. "Welcome back." With a warm smile, Alex entered the room. "I mentioned that I would be." She pondered that for a moment, then nodded as if in agreement with his response. "Would you like to lend a hand?" She waved her hand in the direction of the dolls. "We're hosting a delightful tea party, yet one of our guests is without a seat." Alex lifted an eyebrow in curiosity. "Which one do you prefer?" Lily gestured towards a doll adorned with curly brown locks and a vibrant yellow gown. "Her. Being new, she hasn't figured out her seating yet." The way her words lingered in the air stirred a deep ache within his chest. Gently, he descended to the floor, positioning himself opposite her. "I believe we can come to a solution on that." Lily passed him the doll, observing intently as he repositioned her within the arrangement. She examined his work for a moment, then nodded in agreement. "That's an improvement." Hannah stood in the doorway, her arms crossed, a subtle yet enigmatic smile playing on her lips. Alex noticed her gaze but chose to remain silent. He understood her thoughts. She was pondering whether he was genuinely committed to this, if he truly intended to stick around, or if he would abandon ship at the first sign of difficulty. He remained firmly in place. Lily delicately poured invisible tea into miniature plastic cups, then offered him one with a gentle smile. "You must maintain a certain elegance," she said, showcasing the gesture by raising her pinky delicately. Alex grinned, reflecting her actions. "Is this what you mean?" She let out a soft, melodic laugh. "Indeed. That's the elegant approach." For the first time since their encounter, he noticed a shift in her expression. Confidence. It wasn't large, not at this moment, but it existed. For the first time in his life, he felt that nothing in the world mattered more than achieving it. Alex dedicated his life to crafting agreements, constructing a vast empire, and meticulously controlling every outcome. Somehow, he found himself seated cross-legged on the floor of a 6-year-old's bedroom, delicately balancing a plastic teacup between his fingers while engaging in an imaginary tea party. It was an experience that seemed almost dreamlike, yet simultaneously, it resonated as the most significant achievement of his life. Lily was utterly in her zone. She meticulously positioned her dolls, carefully adjusting their miniature plastic cups and ensuring that each one received an equal share of imaginary tea. Occasionally, she would steal a glance at him, assessing his engagement, quietly determining whether he was genuinely involved or merely indulging her. "Are you enjoying yourself?" she inquired, her delicate fingers gliding over the fabric of her cherished doll's skirt. Alex placed his cup down with precision and gave a thoughtful nod. "This could very well be the most exquisite tea party I've ever attended." Lily chuckled, evidently delighted by his reply. "It's because I organized everything meticulously," she declared with pride. "Only the finest tea gatherings feature cookies, yet we have exhausted our supply." Alex cast a sidelong look at Hannah, who stood casually against the doorframe, observing them with her arms folded across her chest. He noticed how she observed him, her expression shifting subtly between amusement and uncertainty. She lingered, curious to see if he would falter, if he would lose interest and conclude that indulging in make-believe with a child was not worth his effort. She remained unaware that nothing in his existence had ever held greater significance. "I believe I can resolve that," he remarked, glancing back at Lily. "How about we venture out and indulge in some authentic cookies?" Lily's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Is that so?" Alex gave a slight nod. "Certainly. However, you must assure me that you'll choose the finest selections." She smiled broadly. "I consistently choose the finest options." Hannah adjusted her posture, her expression transforming into one of careful consideration. "Alex." He locked eyes with her, feeling the weight of her uncertainty. She continued her efforts to shield Lily, still searching for answers about whether this situation was merely fleeting. He found it hard to hold her accountable for that. He spoke gently, expressing his desire to take her out for some cookies. "Nothing else." Hannah let out a breath, her grip on her sleeves growing firmer. After a lengthy silence, she finally gave a nod. "Understood." Lily exclaimed with joy and swiftly took his hand, tugging him toward the door with surprising force for someone of her petite stature. "Onward, onward." He allowed her to pull him along, a soft laugh slipping out as he trailed behind her into the open air. Hannah snatched her coat and keys, determined to keep them close, and in no time, they strolled down the street toward a quaint bakery just a few blocks away. The rain had ceased, leaving the pavement still glistening, while the sky bore the delicate traces of the retreating sunlight. Lily gleefully moved forward, grasping both of their hands as she waved her arms with enthusiasm. "I really enjoy this place," she remarked, gesturing towards the bakery as they drew near. "They offer cookies adorned with sprinkles." With a gentle curve of his lips, Alex beamed. "That seems like the finest variety." Lily nodded with a grave expression. "Indeed, they are." Upon entering, the aroma of freshly baked bread and sweet sugar enveloped them. Lily pressed her hands against the glass display case, her eyes darting over the rows of cookies with focused intensity. The young woman at the counter offered a warm smile before turning her gaze to Alex. "She appears to be all about seriousness," the woman remarked with a light chuckle. Alex wore a sly grin. "She is an expert in her field." Lily faced him, her expression dramatically solemn as she nodded. "Choose with care." He knelt beside her, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper as if they were about to unveil a closely guarded secret. "Which ones emerge victorious?" Lily gestured towards a tray positioned at the center. "The ones with sprinkles. Perhaps the chocolate chip." Alex rose and signaled to the staff member. "We'll have a dozen of each." Lily's expression brightened, and Hannah, observing silently, shook her head with a faint smile. "You're going to indulge her." Alex cast a fleeting look in her direction. "She truly deserves it." A subtle shift danced across Hannah's face, a gentler nuance, yet she chose not to contest it. After packing the cookies into a small box, Alex passed the bag to Lily. She cradled it gently, as though it were a treasure, and for a fleeting moment, she gazed up at him, as if seeking to grasp an elusive truth. "Excuse me, sir," she inquired after a brief pause. Alex arched an eyebrow. "Indeed. She paused, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. Will you be here tomorrow? His chest constricted, and he acted without a moment's pause. Absolutely. Lily regarded him for a moment longer before nodding, as though she had made the choice to trust him. Once more, she took hold of his hand. Understood. Shall we indulge in some delightful cookies? As they strolled back to the apartment, a sense of calm enveloped Alex, something profound finding its place within him. It was diminutive, hardly perceptible, yet it existed. This marked the dawn of something genuine. Alex had always held the conviction that connections, be they in the realm of business or personal life, were founded on trust. Yet, trust was not a phenomenon that emerged in an instant. It was a journey of earning, fragment by fragment, experience by experience. At that moment, he found himself in the heart of Hannah's cozy kitchen, coming to terms with the considerable effort that lay before him. Lily sat at the table, joyfully nibbling on a sprinkle cookie, her feet swinging playfully beneath the chair. Her hands were dusted with crumbs, yet she appeared unfazed. She appeared utterly relaxed, as though it were the most ordinary occurrence to have him seated opposite her. Hannah, in contrast, leaned against the counter with her arms crossed, observing him intently. Since their return from the bakery, her words had been few and far between. She allowed him to be present, to share moments with Lily, yet the tightness in her shoulders revealed that she remained on edge, anticipating something to unravel. Lily savored another bite of her cookie, tilting her head curiously at him. Do you own a home? Alex stared in surprise at the sudden inquiry. Absolutely, I do. Her brows knitted together in a subtle expression of concern. Is it a spacious residence? He paused momentarily before responding. It's quite substantial. Lily considered the matter with a pensive nod. Does it feel isolating? The inquiry struck him with an intensity that seemed disproportionate. He had never considered his house in that light before. It was elegant, contemporary, and crafted with precision, yet it had never seemed desolate to him, at least not until this moment. At times, he confessed. Lily savored the sweet frosting on her fingers, pondering his response. Consider acquiring a fish. Alex let out a soft laugh. Is that a fish? She nodded, her expression unwavering. Indeed. Silence envelopes them, yet their presence is comforting. Hannah chuckled softly from her place at the counter. Lily has a fascination with fish. Lily radiated joy. I certainly do. They hold a special place in my heart. Alex inclined his body a bit, placing his arms on the table with a casual ease. What should I do if I'm unsure about how to care for a fish? Lily inhaled sharply, as though he had just confessed to a shocking secret. That's incredibly simple. Simply provide them with nourishment and engage in conversation to lift their spirits. He wore a sly grin. Therefore, I would need to converse with the fish. Lily gave a slight nod before extending her hand for another cookie. Indeed. Otherwise, they experience loneliness as well. There was something in her purity, her straightforward reasoning, that caused a tightness in his chest. For years, he immersed himself among the most influential figures globally, individuals who communicated through deals, contracts, and negotiations. Yet, there stood this little girl, effortlessly conveying to him that the solution to loneliness might be as straightforward as having a conversation with a fish. At last, Hannah found her voice. She makes a valid argument. It seems you often engage in conversation with yourself while pondering ideas. Alex cast a fleeting look in her direction. That stands out. Hannah gave a slight shrug. Not to a fish. Lily chuckled, thoroughly enchanted by the notion. Alex exhaled slowly, observing the dynamic between the two of them. They moved to a unique cadence, inhabiting a small universe that he was just beginning to explore. For the first time in ages, he felt a strong desire to be part of it. Perhaps I'll acquire one, he concluded at last. Lily brought her hands together in a joyful applause. Would you like some assistance in choosing it? With a gentle curve of his lips, Alex beamed. Absolutely. She smiled, utterly pleased with how things had unfolded. Hannah shook her head, yet her expression held a newfound softness, a hint of vulnerability breaking through her usual defenses. Alex reclined in his chair, observing Lily as she animatedly discussed the various types of fish they could acquire. She was gradually allowing him to enter her world. For the very first time, he found himself unwilling to hurry through even a single moment. Alex had never imagined that a visit to a pet store could become such a significant milestone in his life. Yet here he was, strolling alongside Lily as she guided him through the aisles, her delicate hand securely clasped in his. She was practically radiating enthusiasm, her eyes darting around the tanks brimming with various fish, gesturing at each one as though she were a knowledgeable connoisseur. That one's too small, she remarked, pausing before a tank brimming with vibrant, tiny fish. And that one glides through the water with remarkable speed. She gestured towards another. That one appears rather displeased. With a sly grin, Alex cast a glance downward at her. Irritable? Lily nodded with a grave expression. Indeed. A grumpy fish is not what you desire. They prefer solitude. He stifled a chuckle, stealing a glance at Hannah, who observed them with a twinkle of amusement in her eyes. Throughout the journey, she remained largely silent, allowing Lily to take the lead. It was clear she was still grappling with the rapid shifts that had unfolded over the past week, how unexpectedly Alex had woven himself into their lives. He sensed her anticipation, ready for him to falter, to withdraw, to conclude that this was beyond his capacity. He was rooted to the spot. Lily inhaled sharply, pulling on his hand. That particular one. She placed her small hands gently on the glass of a tank positioned in the middle of the aisle. Within the confines of the tank, a delicate school of blue fish glided effortlessly, their fins flowing behind them like strands of silk. Alex knelt next to her. What makes that one special? Lily beamed with delight. Due to his stylish appearance. And he's a shade of blue, reminiscent of our eyes. Her words caused a tightness to coil within him. Hannah let out a gentle breath from behind them. So, you're actually going through with this, are you? Alex glanced over at her. Your tone suggests a hint of surprise. She adjusted her position, folding her arms across her chest. I suppose I am. I never imagined you would be someone to have a pet. Alex turned his gaze toward Lily, who was now joyfully conversing with the fish behind the glass. He confessed that he wasn't. However, I also didn't envision myself as someone who would have a daughter. Everything evolves. Hannah's expression softened, yet her lips remained sealed. Moments later, the employee gently placed the fish into a small plastic bag and presented it to Lily. She held it gently, gazing up at Alex with sparkling eyes. A name is essential for him. Alex paused to reflect. What is it regarding? Finn. Lily inclined her head thoughtfully. Finn. She repeated the name several times, trying it on for size before giving a nod of approval. I find it quite enjoyable. As they strolled toward the checkout, Alex observed the effortless way Lily clasped his hand, as if it were a gesture she had perfected over time. It was a seemingly trivial matter, yet it held a significance for him that words could hardly capture. Hannah seemed to have picked up on it as well, for when he cast a glance her way, she was observing them with an expression that was difficult to decipher. Once they settled the bill for the fish and gathered all their supplies, they stepped back outside, feeling the refreshing afternoon breeze against their skin. Lily moved forward with a lightness in her step, cradling the bag with Finn delicately in both hands. Alex leaned closer to Hannah, his voice dropping to a whisper to keep it from reaching Lily's ears. You're still not convinced that I'm here to stay, are you? Hannah let out a soft sigh, gently tucking a stray lock of hair behind her ear. I wish to, Alex. However, I have managed to accomplish this independently for 6 years. I'm unsure how to simply allow you entry. Alex acted without a moment's pause. Allow me to demonstrate this to you. She gazed up at him, her warm brown eyes probing his, seeking something, perhaps reassurance, perhaps certainty. At last, she gave a nod. Understood. It wasn't an elaborate display. It was a straightforward commitment, devoid of embellishments. Yet, it marked progress. And that was everything he required. The next week, Alex stood in Hannah's cozy apartment, intently observing as Lily bent over the fish tank, her nose almost touching the glass. Finn, comfortably nestled in his new surroundings, glided effortlessly through the water, unaware of the significance of his existence. Lily dedicated nearly an hour to ensuring every detail was just right, positioning the delicate decorations precisely to her liking, fine-tuning the water temperature with Hannah's assistance, and softly speaking to Finn to guarantee he felt at home. Alex had never witnessed a child so deeply engrossed in something so tiny. Perhaps it transcended the mere act of fishing. Perhaps this was her method of navigating the complexities, of coming to terms with the sudden presence of a father in her life. Hannah rested against the kitchen counter, observing from afar. That evening, she was more subdued than normal, and Alex sensed that she was still grappling with the changes in their lives. For 6 long years, she held on to the conviction that this journey was hers to navigate alone. Allowing him in was not something that would occur in an instant. Lily finally averted her gaze from the fish tank and bounded over to the couch, effortlessly climbing up beside Alex. When he first arrived, she had been cautious, maintaining her distance, observing him intently as if attempting to discern his authenticity. In that moment, she settled beside him effortlessly, as if it were the most ordinary occurrence imaginable. She rested her head on his arm, releasing a soft sigh. Finn is quite fond of his new abode. With a gentle curve of his lips, Alex beamed. I share that sentiment as well. She looked up at him. You'll look after him well, won't you? He gave a slight nod. Absolutely. It's important to keep an eye on him from time to time. Ensure that I am following all the correct steps. Lily beamed with delight. I am capable of accomplishing that. Hannah made her way over, taking a seat on the opposite side of the couch. At first, she remained silent, simply observing Lily as she leaned against Alex. Her eyes held a certain fragility, revealing a lingering fear that made her hesitant to accept the reality of the moment. Lily let out a soft yawn, her delicate fingers instinctively wrapping around the fabric of his shirt sleeve. Shall we repeat this tomorrow? Alex sensed a constriction in his chest. Before he had the chance to respond, Hannah interjected. Not tomorrow, my dear. Alex is occupied with tasks. Lily's brow furrowed just a bit, yet she remained where she was. Will you return afterward? Alex locked eyes with Hannah, their daughter nestled between them. He understood what she anticipated, recognized that this was the moment of true significance. I will be here, he stated with conviction. Each and every day. For as long as you desire me to be. Lily pondered his words for a moment before breaking into a satisfied smile. Hannah took a deep breath, her gaze drifting to her hands as she gathered her thoughts before finally breaking the silence. She confessed quietly, struggling to accept that this was truly happening. Alex extended his hand, gently placing it over hers. Indeed, it is. She glanced up at him then, and for the first time since he had uncovered the truth, he noticed a change in her expression. No doubt. Without a doubt. Anticipation. Lily's delicate voice shattered the stillness. Father. Alex's breath hitched. He had heard her call him that once before, yet this time, it carried a different weight. This time, it seemed as though she was aware. He took a deep breath, striving to maintain a calm tone. Absolutely, darling. Lily let out another yawn, her eyelids growing heavy as she nestled closer to him. It's wonderful to have you here. Alex shut his eyes briefly, allowing those words to resonate profoundly within him. He devoted his whole existence to creating something he believed was significant. He had thought that success was defined by dominance, by riches, by authority. As he sat there, his daughter nestled against him, and Hannah finally allowing her defenses to soften just a bit, he came to the realization that he had been mistaken. This was what held significance. He was determined not to squander another moment of it. The conclusion of this narrative is both uplifting and profoundly fulfilling, as it transcends Alex's mere discovery of his daughter. It delves into themes of redemption, second chances, and the profound impact of selecting one's family. Alex begins as a man who appears to possess it all: wealth, power, and control. Yet, through Lily, he discovers that none of these things hold a candle to what he has truly been lacking. His journey transcends merely obtaining the title of her father. It revolves around demonstrating, through consistent actions rather than mere words, that he is a steadfast presence, committed to showing up every single day, regardless of the circumstances. Hannah's role holds equal importance. She transcends the role of mere obstacle or love interest. She is a mother who has devoted 6 years to safeguarding her daughter in the only way she understands. Her uncertainty isn't about seeking retribution against Alex but about safeguarding Lily from harm. Observing her gradually open up to him, permitting herself to dream once more, is equally as impactful as Alex's metamorphosis. Yet, the true essence of the narrative lies within Lily. She serves as the connection between them, a pure spirit yearning for affection and a sense of security. Her quiet trust, her readiness to embrace Alex without hesitation, and the tender way she refers to him as daddy at the conclusion, this is what renders the resolution profoundly moving. This is not a tale of a man who unexpectedly finds himself a father in the blink of an eye. It's about claiming your rightful spot, mending past hurts, and understanding that family transcends the time that's slipped away. It's about cherishing the moments you choose to embrace as you move ahead. The concluding moment, in which Lily drifts off beside Alex, beautifully encapsulates that sentiment. It's not theatrical, it's not extravagant, it's simply authentic. In those still moments, we often find the deepest significance.